Okay, so now you've done everything. There's not much left to do. All you have to do is get your reports out and understand what they mean. So once you're in your bank summary, so we've got the same for the international version as well. We have a bank summary and a developer summary. And the only difference between the bank summary and the developer summary is the fact that under developer summary, if you've wanted to calculate the cost for developers' equity as interest costs, they will come up here and do the calculations based on that. But if you are in the bank summary, you'll see that the developer interest costs are missing, because when you take out a summary and show it to your lender, you don't really need to show them what is the cost of the equity that you are going to put in. That will unnecessarily reduce your development margin, and you don't want to show that to the bank. So that's why I've got them in two separate tabs. Apart from that, everything is exactly the same between the Australian version and the international version, except for the fact that there is the GST component. So in the Australian version, you'll find TDC X GST liability and the including GST liability, whereas in the international version, you'll find that there is no mention of GST over here. There are no calculation, and that's the reason you'll see that if you put the same amount of calculations everywhere else, they'll come out to be the same. They'll come out to be a little bit more for the international version, because they don't have to pay the GST as the Australian version calculates. So in here we've got, this is the same schedule. This is only to summarize everything that you had put in your dashboard, and that's why it's here. And then it gives you certain costs ex GST by stages, based on the stages that you would have selected under here in your budget sheet. And once you've got those stages, then it'll give you a breakdown of the developer's equity that you will have to put in at each stage, and the debt that can come in at each stage. So mostly the debt's coming in when you've got land acquisition, and then you've got the settlement just after when you've got to start the construction. That's when the debt's coming in. So the same thing goes with the international version as well. So it'll give you your equity based on land acquisition that you would need to put in, and the debt that'll come in at that time, and it'll give you the calculations for your construction start and all those calculations and so on. So when you are in your land acquisition costs, you've got land/site purchase value. It breaks it down for you in per unit or per square feet. And in the Australian version, it's all broken down into per unit X GST, and then per meter square X GST, and then you've got a percentage of the TDC and the GRV. So this is a summary, very self-explanatory in terms of what every column is. So these are the costs that are being provided to you that include GST, and these are excluding GST. Then price per unit, percentage of TDC, and the percentage of GRV, and that's the breakdown here for all your other costs as well. So when you go down, then you need to now understand what each one of these would mean. So if you watch the theory questions, the theory section of the tutorial, what each one of these would mean and how they impact on your feasibility, they are all discussed in the theory sections in the modules that came in before we jumped into the financial feasibility application. So you've got your equity multiples, you've got your maximum debt, you've got your cost of equity, you've got weighted average cost of capital, and so on. Your sensitivity analysis of how if your sales were to go down by 5% and 10%, and at the same time, if your costs were to go up by 5% and 10%, what would your development look like? The same impact on your development margin. If the same thing would happen, how your development margin would fall from 20.8% to 9.8 to a negative 1.3. This is a scenario where you actually lose money. So as a thumb rule, when I do a development and I do a feasibility, I always make sure that my worst case scenario still comes out a positive. If you've got a positive number here, then chances are that this is your absolute worst case scenario, and you can change them based on your dashboard, on your inputs of what you want your sensitivity to be. So on your sensitivity sales 5%, 5%, you can change these values. Click on your update values and come back here to see what's what, so that you can then see all these different scenarios that could eventuate from the development. The same way you'll see for the international version as well. We have the same things here. It's just that we just have one amount. There's no including GST or excluding GST. And it gives you all these values per unit, dollar per square feet of the built area, percentage of TDC, percentage of GRV, and so on. You've got finance costs, dollar per unit, percentage, and so on. And we've actually hidden the GST section calculations here so that they don't have any impact on these calculations. And you've got your development margin on cost. All the details remain basically the same. So that's pretty much it for the entire application that you can use. You can start using it. If you need to send a feedback, there are sections in there that you can send a feedback. If you have an issue, you can shoot me an email anytime, and I'll quickly record a video and show you how that can be done and so on.